911. It's a number dialed over 240 million times each year. In all cases, these calls are answered by trained professionals, and many are certified NENA ENPs. Let's talk to one of these professionals, unedited and completely off the cuff.
Are you positive he's breathing?
No.
Okay, and he's blue?
Yeah.
Okay, then there's a good chance he's not breathing. Is there somebody else there that can do CPR?
Oh my God.
911, what's your emergency?
NENA, the National Emergency Number Association, and an ANSI-approved standards development organization, has created the Emergency Number Professional Accreditation, specifically for public safety professionals. ENP certification establishes the benchmark for performance, signifying a broad-based competence in the public safety field. Successful certification completion demonstrates an individual's mastery of the knowledge base requirements for an emergency management position. So join me as we talk to yet another new ENP, unedited and completely off the cuff. Hey, it's Fletch. Welcome to yet another edition of Off the Cuff True Confessions of an EMP. You know, I've been doing this for probably 2.5, 3 years now, and I keep trying to upgrade things. We started off with voice and we moved to video, and I wanted to keep bringing you something additional with this. So today I figured out how to give you more. And I went all the way to California with Irma Moore, ENP with Pleasanton Police Department. Welcome to the podcast, Irma. Congratulations on your brand new ENP.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
So how long have you been in public safety? Tell me a little bit about how you got started out in California.
Sure. So I've been a dispatcher for 13 years. I started off with the Oakland Police Department. I was there for 10 years, and then I lateraled over to Pleasanton. What really got me into public safety was I lived in Oakland. I grew up in Oakland and Spanish speaker, and my mom wasn't fluent in English. So anytime she had any issues with calling for an ambulance, she just had a really hard time. So that kind of is what took me through my journey. I wanted to help our community, especially the Spanish speakers who didn't have a lot of resources. So I looked into becoming a 911 operator, and then I applied, and here I am now.
No, that's great. So what technology have you guys deployed in Pleasanton that helps with the multilingual environment? Have you done anything there, or do you just staff appropriate call takers with language skills?
So currently we have 2 bilingual dispatchers, Spanish speaking, and then we have, I believe, a Vietnamese Mandarin. So there's not a lot of us, but if one of us is not on duty, we have the language line that we use. So right now that's how we're working through that.
So in Pleasanton, I imagine it's a large Asian population, and you've got so many different dialects there. How hard is that when you're engaging language line? I mean, what do you ask them for?
So usually we try to become familiar with the primary languages. We'll say Mandarin, Cantonese, and usually they'll say yes to one. Or if you get on the language line, sometimes you're fortunate to have a translator that can understand what they're saying. So it's usually a hit or miss. So it can be a little bit overwhelming, especially when you don't know what's going on and you're trying to figure it out quickly. But I will say a lot of the times we do get Spanish speakers more. So usually you hear one of my colleagues yelling out for me or my partner, like, hey, Spanish, please. So we'll jump in and take over.
No, that's great. So what made you go out for your ENP? You've been in the business 13 years. Why now? What was the trigger?
So it all started when I switched over to Pleasanton. Before, I had no idea what NENA was. I had no idea about ENP. I was fortunate enough to have a mentor who's my current supervisor, Maya White. She was in pursuit of her ENP a couple years ago, and she's really the one that told me what it was and encouraged me to pursue it. She offered, her study materials once she was done. So I had no idea what it was until I came over to Pleasanton and I saw how so many of my colleagues were pursuing it. Then I did my own research. I went into the NINA website. I looked into it, and I'm like, this is something I definitely want to do. And how come I was never, told of this before? So yeah, it was an interesting and very hard journey, but I'm glad that I passed, and here I am.
If you had such a great mentor, why were you talking trash about her before we started recording? I don't understand.
That is not true. Maya has been great, and she is definitely super supportive, and she's definitely a great supervisor.
No, that's fantastic. The mentoring program is really, really important. If you get a
Mhm.
good, solid mentor, your career will just skyrocket. So you're so fortunate to have that. Now, your job that you've got your ENP is to become a mentor
Mhm.
for somebody else.
Yep, and I'm working on that as we speak. I already have someone that I actually connected with through the NINA conference. We both won the Gold Line Scholarship.
Oh, wow.
So now I'm passing it on to her. I reached out and like, hey, I'm finished with all my study materials, and you're free to have them all. And feel free to use me and pick my brain, and go and sign up for the next test.
Great. So, what did you do to study? What were your tactics to learn this? Because I'm sure when you first got the book, you said, "Whoa, what's all this about?"
Yeah, for sure. When I first ordered the study guide, I completely was overwhelmed. I was like, well, I haven't heard of half of these things in here, and I've been a dispatcher for 13 years, so it's definitely not what I expected. But I did do some research, and talking to my mentor, Maya, she did tell me you definitely need to study for this. It's not something that you can just sign up and go take, and make sure you take your time to study. So I gave myself at least 5 months to study. And I like to set deadlines. So I signed up for the test, and I made sure I had at least 6 to 5 months. So I studied for 5 months, I ordered the study guide, I signed up for a study group. I also reached out to other mentors from the past who have taken their Ps, and they were very supportive and shared their study materials. So I reached out to anyone I could, and just took pieces from everyone that was willing to provide, tools and some support.
So the study groups obviously are all free, and there are
Mhm.
several different ones that are out there. Did you do just one study group, or did you take advantage of multiples?
So I just did one primarily. It was Tracy Eldridge. And then once I went to the NINA conference, I saw that they had an ENP boot camp. So that's one of the reasons why I definitely wanted to go and take advantage of that. So when I was there, I can't remember which company the instructor was with, but I know they also have a study group. And having that half a day camp definitely helped, because it kind of guided me to what I really needed to focus more, that I wasn't so much familiar with, which is the next generation 911 stuff. So that was definitely helpful. But I primarily used one study group.
Okay, because I talked to a lot of people, and what they'll do is if they've got zero technical knowledge, they found that
Mhm.
Tracy's was very good because she's very good at explaining complex concepts in
Mhm.
terms that anybody can understand. And then Mission Critical has great webinars online, and they dig into it with the real experts. And then there are a couple of
Yeah.
others out there that are just great for reference material and backup. You can't read enough, right? There's just so many things.
Right.
It's just such a wide industry. And then you look at the book, you're like, how much of this do
Mhm.
I really know? And how are you going to get that out of
Right.
150 questions? So that's always the challenge. What did you think when you were taking the test? How did you feel? Did you think you were going to do well, or were you just saying this is a total loss?
I honestly, I had no idea what to expect. And I did the in-person testing. So when you go in, um, everything is like super follow the rules. You can't have a cell phone. They have to, this whole security wand thing on you and remove your jewelry. So that first was like, okay, this is really serious. And once I sat and actually looked at the questions, I did find that they weren't as they weren't the same questions that I was studying, but they were phrased in a way that I knew the material. I just had to really remember and focus on what the question was really asking me. So it was a little bit overwhelming when leaving the room. I had no idea if I passed or failed because I just felt like I didn't know. So yeah, it was a very interesting experience.
How did you feel when you got the email? Probably when you got to your car.
Yeah, the moment I sat in my driver's seat, I got an email, and then I just felt my heart was racing. I opened it and it said, the permanently pass. I just felt like a huge weight was off my shoulders, and I was so happy. I called my husband. I was like, I passed, and then he put me on speaker. I talked to my kids who had seen me study, and my little 3-year-old, she was like, "Mama, did you get a promotion?" I was like, "No, I didn't." Eventually it'll get me there one day. So it was an amazing feeling.
No, that's great. So when you got your final score, were you happy with it?
I was. There was a lot of the technology stuff that I wasn't super comfortable with. So I definitely felt more comfortable with, the legal stuff, the management side of things. So I knew that I wasn't as strong in technology. So when I got my score, I felt like, okay, well, this makes sense because I didn't feel as confident in a certain subject.
Right. People think that people score like in the 90s and, 95s. The average score is down in the 80s or less. And there's a good chunk of people that pass in the mid 70s, in the upper 70s. And it's, again, it's not designed to be an easy test. It's like if you're going to your cardiologist, do you want him to take an easy test just to pass, or do you want him to learn this stuff? So, you're dealing with people's lives. How do you feel now that you've got it? I mean, the technology was your weak spot, and that's common for someone who's been in dispatch for many, many years. They were never exposed to it. So it's this sudden exposure to stuff that you've never seen before. How do you feel about it now? Do you think about things differently when you're on the desk? Do you think about the call and how it got to you?
Yes, definitely. And it's so crazy how after I passed the test, we were experiencing a lot of phone issues, and we were dropping our Annie Alley. And I was like, me and my partner, who also recently passed, we were just like, oh my God, like we know what this could mean. We know what's happening. And we were like, just baffled of how much information we knew that we didn't before. So I definitely feel more confident now. I feel like I know what I'm talking about if I have to explain, like a phone issue. So yeah, it's been a very great learning experience.
Annie Alley is a perfect example. It's this mysterious little black box, and you have no idea how that information gets up on your screen for that call. And then you learn it, and it's not hugely complex. It's just it's a logical flow, but you understand it now, and you're like, I'm the smartest person in the room now that I know this. How did I do my job without that? And that's what's really cool about getting your ENP. You understand how this $1 million technology that's in front of you actually operates. And that allows you to troubleshoot when things don't go right. You go through your head, well, this and this and this and this need to happen. Something is not happening right here. Makes you a more effective employee all the way around. So good for you.
Definitely. Thank you.
What do you have for an advice to someone who's kind of on the line? Well, I don't know if I should take it. It's really hard. I don't want to fail. What kind of advice do you have for somebody that's wondering if it's for them?
I would say just don't overthink it. Set a deadline. Look at what dates are coming up. Make sure you give yourself at least 6 to 5 months to study. And if you make a deadline and you sign up for that test, that's going to be your motivation to study, get it done. Otherwise, you're going to keep on putting it off. It's definitely a huge accomplishment. It opens up a lot of doors, and it definitely makes you a better dispatcher, better call taker, better supervisor. There's just a whole new level of knowledge that you gain. So I definitely say book the exam and then give yourself at least 6 to 5 months to study, and you'll do great.
Just do it.
Just do it.
I think that's trademarked. I'm not sure. But no, about half the people I talk to say, I was looking at it for years and kept putting it off, and I finally set the date to force myself to commit, and that's worked for a lot of people. What kind of strategy did you use when you sat down for the exam as far as questions? Did you go through each one and answer it, or did you blow through it once and then go back? Because you have time to take the test twice if you need to.
Yeah, I definitely took my time. I knew that a lot of the questions were going to be, when I did the ENP boot camp, they tell you, take your time. There's questions that may have multiple answers may seem as the right one. So make sure you're reading the question. So I definitely took my time. I used as much time as I could. And then you're allowed to mark whatever question you may not be too sure about, and then come back and try, answer it later. So that's what I did. I would take my time. If there was a question that I wasn't too sure, I'd mark it, and then I came back. And by the time I came back, I knew what the answer was. So that was definitely the strategy that I used.
That's another very common thing, Irma. People go through and they're like, God, I almost know that, but I'm really not sure. Let me put that aside. And then they'll go through, and then 20 questions later, they'll come across something and go, oh, that's the answer to number 4. That happens all the time.
Just clicks.
Yeah. So it's what I enjoy. I spent 12 years on the NINA Institute board, and every year we go through and we pull new questions for the exam. And we look at the questions that were there, the ones that do well, we keep. The ones that don't do so well, we figure out why, reword the question, reword the answer. If it's really super easy and everybody's getting it right, we got to fix that too and go, well, that one needs to be made a little harder. Or if nobody's getting the question right, then that doesn't do anything either. We have a question that nobody's answering. Something is wrong. Either the question's not being asked correctly, or the correct answer is not being presented. Because there is one correct answer that is the most popular choice. The other 3 can be very, very close. But there's that one little thing in the question that will say, nope, the answer to that one is C. And it's tricky. You have to read, but that's part of your job, right? So that's part of the overall training. So, but the fact that you walked out not knowing if you passed or failed, I think that's what makes it a good test. And that's why it's so well respected by everybody. Have you seen that from your peers? Obviously from your other EMPs, because you passed. They know what you went through. What about people that weren't EMPs? Did they give you the credit for that now?
They definitely did. They're super supportive. And I mean, they all saw how much I studied and how stressed I was. I'm I got to study. I don't have time, to socialize. I make sure I make time to study. And then once I'm done studying, then I'll socialize. But a lot of my colleagues who saw how much work we put into it, they definitely are super supportive. And now they're like, hey, so, what do I do to take this exam? So it's been a great journey, super supportive, and I've been getting recognized even by our officers. They're like, oh my God, this is great. You did what? How do you have time? Don't you work overtime? Yeah, just made it work.
And I'm a mother of 4, and I have a full-grown infant. It's also an officer.
Yeah.
We know how hard they are to take care of. That's right. Yeah.
Yes, definitely the hardest one.
Now I have that recorded. So am I going to have to edit that out? Fletch, please
take that
out. No, that's great. That's great, though. No, it's great that you have the support infrastructure surrounding you from the family level. I love the fact that your 3-year-old was tuned into what you were doing, because that just makes the whole job, and it makes everything that you're doing and all the extra hard work that you're putting in. When you get a 3-year-old that recognizes, Mommy did this, Mommy is the best, those are the best compliments you can ever get.
Yes, that is very true.
So, all right. Well, listen, thanks very much. It's been a pleasure meeting you. Hopefully next year, Nina's out on the West Coast.
Yes. So hopefully I'll see you there.
Yeah, definitely try to look me up and see if we can catch up with each other. Irma Moore, thank you. You have brought more to Off the Cuff, True Confessions. Thanks for telling us your story. Congratulations on your ENP. I hope you do wonderful things with it. And best of luck.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Okay, take care.
Well, that wraps up this episode of Off the Cuff, Confessions of an ENP. I'm Mark Fletcher, ENP, and I'm the Vice President of Public Safety Solutions at 911 Inform. Off the Cuff is sponsored by 911 Inform, delivering next-generation 911 solutions to the enterprise today and making every second count. Visit them on the web at 911inform.com. Remember, you can follow me on Twitter at Fletch911. Check out all my blogs and podcasts at Fletch.tv. And be sure to like and subscribe below. That way you'll be immediately notified whenever a new podcast is published. Thanks so much for listening. If you're in public safety, thanks for what you do. Take care and have a great day.